Everything good in life is forged on the anvil of adversity. We want to start a movement of high achievers that have the courage to fashion a life of greatness. A movement of those brave enough to face the fires of self-improvement on the journey to peak expression. Smiths build things. Smiths get the job done. We are All Smiths. Welcome to the All Smith Project, where greatness is forged, not found. The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the All Smith Project. Today's guest is a professional golfer, a husband, a father, and in his own words, a PGA Tour player who's won a little bit, trains a little bit, but in my words, the fittest golfer on the planet. Today, I'd love to introduce Scott Stallings. What's up, man?
All good, man. I appreciate you having me.
Today's going to be a fun conversation. I've been a fanboy for a while. O'Keefe might have me beat in the fanboy column, but I'm excited to connect with you today because I'm at an age, man, where a lot of my friends, my clients, and family members are just jumping into the golf game, and they're all big fans of you and what you're doing and how you're kind of blending the worlds of training and golf together. So thanks for joining me today, and I'm excited to share some cool golf tidbits with the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of an open book. I don't really shy away from much, and yeah, it's a unique world of professional golf, and whatever kind of training whatever you call what I'm doing, training, I just try to be better than I was the day before, and hopefully be better tomorrow than I was today, and kind of continue to push that through each and everything that I'm a part of.
I love that, man. Before we jump into your story, man, there's a really cool story that. Not only did I see it a few times on ESPN, but I heard it from O'Keefe, directly from him when we crossed paths at one of the CrossFit events last year. And that was your Masters invite for 2023 was apparently sent from the PGA to the wrong Scott Stallings. And apparently that same gentleman, his wife also has the same last name as your wife. Will you share that story a little bit to our community?
Yeah, oddly enough, I was represented by a management company that was based in St. Simon's Island, and they had moved. And the last time I played the Masters, my forwarding address was that same address, which the other Scott and Jennifer Stallings had a condo that they live in Atlanta, but they own a little vacation place in St. Simon's. That was literally like right next door to where this old office building used to be. And so the UPS guy just kind of saw it. It's like, oh, the number's wrong. I'll go put it in there. And the guy thought that they were tickets to the Masters, and which inevitably it was a ticket. It just wasn't necessarily what he was looking for. So it was a wild thing just as far as how it all transpired. But we had a good time. We had him down to the tournament, had a chance to meet him and his wife. But yeah, what are the odds? You have the same name, wife's same first name. My wife's name is Jennifer as well, and it was just sort of. Just literally shake your head. It's like, man, there's no way. Like, it just makes you laugh. And we had a really good time with them down there. Him and his wife were super nice, and had him done the Masters for a couple of days, and got a chance to something. Obviously, people will never forget.
That's so cool, man. Also, really funny, and I'm happy they eventually worked it out so you can go get an opportunity to play at Augusta. A few weeks ago, man.
I think they were going to let me play. but it was just sort of the commemorative part as far as like all the ceremony that comes around with. Actually, I mean, there was only 86 invitations in the entire world, so pretty
Hey, that's
wild to
something to
see
be
how.
proud of, man. That's really cool. A couple weeks ago, man, I was able to connect with professional surfer Shane Dorian. And something that he and I talked about is just like no wave is exactly the same. Very similar to like no course is exactly the same. Like it definitely has a little bit of change based on the cut of the grass, the growth of certain factors of the course, the weather factors. What's that like for you? Like, how do you end up, like in CrossFit, man, and in basketball, it's like the hoop's the same size. The basketball is the same size, and like obviously your clubs, you get used to those. Your ball stays the same size, but like there's so much variance associated with the sport of golf. Is that something that even lands on your radar anymore, or is that something that people often think about? For me, being a novice and somebody that gets out on the course with my buddies and plays a little bit of, probably call it whack fuck, for lack of a better term, where I smack the ball, it goes somewhere, and then I'm cussing at myself about it. What's that like for you, man, with such variance in your sport?
Yeah, I think it's golf's very synonymous with life. Like, you kind of get an idea as far as what's going to happen, and you go out there and try to execute the best you possibly can. And you know you need to be stubborn to a fault, but also an understanding you need to adapt and overcome to whatever comes your way. And I think that's the difference between high level professionals and good amateurs or college players. Like, we and adapt and overcome. We might not have some of the high skill levels that some people like. I mean, I help our guys here at the University of Tennessee, where I live here in Knoxville, and I mean, we got some guys that have far and above, way higher skill level than I have. But my experience, discipline, and just understanding as far as how to just change on the fly is just better than they are. And I mean, and hopefully they will learn to get to that point, but it's kind of hard to teach, and it's a little bit more you have to experience it to kind of understand what that's like. As far as the way the golf course changes from Thursday to Sunday, even the same golf course can play totally different from day to day. Weather, tee time, time of day, anything. Just when you play a sport outside, anything's possible. And I think that's why, love it or hate it, no day is the same. And you sort of gotta, as soon as your feet hit the floor in the morning, you got to be ready for anything. Golf's a perfect example of that.
Where did you acquire that level and that mindset of adaptability? What was your childhood like? What sports did you have exposure to when you were young, and how did you kind of start fostering this mindset throughout your life?
I'm very uncommon now, but I mean, I played everything. I played everything but football. And golf was kind of something I always did in the, in between seasons. Baseball is my first love, and, to be honest, still is. I mean, one of my close friends, professional baseball player for the Cubs, and I give him a hard time. I was like, dude, I would be an unbelievable, like, 26th man. I would come and, I mean, y'all would be winning by 20 and I'd get to play, or losing by 20. I mean, I'd play any position and just have a freaking blast out there doing it. But it's funny, after spending some time with his team, especially the pitchers, I mean, all they want to do is play. It's like, no, man, like, let's go to the ballpark. Let's see what it's like. And they're like, man, we need to go to the range. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, and it's, that's kind of why golf's such a beautiful game, and the fact that it's a common ground sport. Like, I can go throw around with my buddy, but as soon as that guy starts throwing 95, like, high and inside, I'm like, that, seat over there in the grandstand is looking pretty good right now. Same thing, like football, basketball, like, you can shoot around or this and that, but as soon as, the lights come on, it's time for everyone to step aside. And golf's a little bit different. You have your skill level in mind, and through a lot of different ways we can figure out a way to have a pretty competitive game, irrelevant of what you're capable of in mind, and just kind of understanding we can go and play and experience the course together.
Yeah, totally, man. Something that I've given a lot of my golf buddies a hard time about, and also my baseball friends, ironically, is like, It bothers me, man, that fat people can be really good at some of these sports. And I understand it's the hardest thing in the world to hit a fastball going 90 to 100 miles an hour. I understand, especially in my limited experience in the golf world, how challenging it is. It's probably the hardest sport in the world. But, man, you allowed yourself to go that way for a little part of your career where you're like, you know what, as long as I make birdies and I do the craft, the rest doesn't really matter. And you allowed yourself to get up to around 235, close to 240 pounds, and then you made a change.
257.
257 is the highest you got. Wow, man, I did not know that. And now looking back, it's like, is that something that landed on your radar where it's like, hey, I thought I could get away with it, and then I realized, like, not only is this affecting my mental, physical, and emotional health, but people don't realize you're walking roughly 10 miles every time you play in 18 holes. You're walking roughly 100 miles a week. That eventually adds up where it's beating up the body a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, this is it. That what you have and that what this is it. That's all we got. You can replace some things here and there for the most part, but I mean, the meat and potatoes of what we have like inside this body, I mean, it's hard to replace them, you know, and as new. And so it's amazing once you know, kind of go, people don't know, you know, what bad feels like until you know what good feels like. And you hear all those different sayings as far as understanding of like, you know, you don't know where to go until you know where you come from, all this and that. But I, you know, kind of thought, you know, golf first, and as long as birdies and everything were taken care of, life outside of it didn't really, not necessarily that it didn't matter, but like the decisions that I made off the course didn't really affect on the course. And, you know, that's been young and naive and, you know, ignorant to a lot of different things. And, you know, next thing you know, life comes at you quick and you got to figure some things out. And, you know, everyone thinks that the changes that I made were based off of my career. And to be honest, at that time, not that I could have cared less about my career, but I knew that if I didn't take the time to fix that, the rest of my career was irrelevant because it wasn't going to happen. And, you know, that's not melodramatic. That's a fact. Like, you couldn't go down the path that I was going down, and just the lack of training or understanding or anything like that to get to where I was. And then to expect, like, I mean, like in any sport, the players are younger, they're better, they're more mature, they're faster, they're more talented. And you think just like sitting on the sidelines doing nothing, expecting just to go out there and continue just to kind of, you know, tread water. Eventually, you know, you're going to sink. And I, you know, thankfully had a bunch of people, you know, come around and, you know, point me in the right direction, the ability to kind of pull myself up and literally learn. And we were on a call earlier today, and one of the guys kept saying, it's like, man, like, you know a lot. It's like, I know a lot because I ask an insane amount of questions. And the moment that you think you got it figured out, it's over because you don't have anything figured out. You just, the inevitability of, you know, constantly learning and understanding and how to validate voices and understand of, you know, what brings value and, you know, pushes you to try to be better, you know, whether it's in your career or life or body or, you know, whatever it is. You know, there's so many things you can learn from everyone else. And the moment that we get that kind of closed off, it's like, man, you go through the rest of your life in a tough spot. And, you know, I try to wake up every single day and be like, I'm trying to figure out and be better and learn as much as I possibly can. And, you know, continue to try to keep that mindset in everything that I do.
I love that, man. I appreciate you sharing. Was there a defining moment for you when you got up to 257 pounds where you're like, what I'm doing is not working? Did you have a conversation with somebody you cared about? Was there a blood panel or an injury, or what was the thing that really landed on your radar where it's like, I need to change?
Kind of a little bit of everything. I've said in a lot of the stories, there was you know, started doing some lab work, and, you know, obviously it was a mess. And started going around and, you know, trying to figure out, and they thought I had an autoimmune. But now looking back on it, like, that probably checked a lot of boxes, and that was probably an easy answer. But thankfully I found an endocrinologist at UCLA and was able to get in touch with him, and he set me down, and I knew that I was basically going to be there for 2 days and literally get checked for everything under the sun. And he told me it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and he set me down. He said, I find stuff with people every single day that we cannot cure. He said, so I just need you to know that that is a possibility. And I don't know what these next 2 days are going to look like, but we're going to find the answers. And thankfully, it was all stuff that could be, lifestyle, management, sleep, up training, all the different things. But I didn't have a baseline to be able to make any of those changes lasting. And does that kind of make sense? Like when you have a baseline of 0 and then you make anything, inevitably it causes stress. And then I didn't have any reserve. So I just kind of continued to just tank. So any type that I had tried to improve, the baseline of understanding from the way that my body responded to that was just like, hold on, please don't do this. And, so he's trying to build me up, and kind of create a little bit more of a body and just kind of a nervous system that just handled it better than what I was putting it in. Because basically it was able to handle nothing. It was doing the best it possibly could with what it had. And he basically described it as like, if your alternator in your car is going out and you like merge on the highway, like when you hammer the gas, like that thing's going to kick and, get you on the highway. But as soon as you let off the throttle, that thing's going to be like, man, I don't know how many more of those I got in me. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I operated. Like, when the gun went off on tour and, I was able to play and do whatever, but man, as soon as that 18th hole is over, it's like, I got to do this 3 more days.
Wow.
Like, let's just try to get through tomorrow. And man, I was 29, 30 years old, and that's just like a sucky way to be. And
the irony is most people are living their lives that way, right? They're just trying to make it to their pillow at night, and they're not living a life that they're truly thriving. They're just kind of trying to survive. In this case, you're trying to survive the 18 holes and extend your career as long as you can, not realizing that there's some choices and some habits that can change. And I've heard you talk about it before. It's one of my favorite things that you've said, and that is you didn't make huge changes. You weren't trying to hit home runs on day one. It was very similar to what James Clear talks about from the book Atomic Habits. It was very subtle habit changes. For other people that might be having this similar experience in a different arena, what were some of the original habits or changes that you made that worked really well to then create some momentum down your health and wellness journey?
Yeah, like sleep and understanding. I found out through the process I had obstructive sleep apnea. I broke my nose a couple times as a kid and kind of had like that redneck, like get back out there, and honestly didn't really think anything about it, but had a bunch of sinus infections and just kind of crap as a kid that just sort of comes and you don't really think anything of it. And then you start to look at a ENT and spend a little bit of time on how you breathe and understanding of, when you're trying to rest and restore and, kind of how that all gets affected. And, so I kind of got that sorted out. And once I kind of got the sleep pattern and understanding of like what that looked like, man, the cascade effect of what that look like from the rest of my life. Because, man, if you can't rest and recover, like all the stuff that you do, like I don't care how good you train in the gym, I don't care like how good you eat, I don't care how you do these things. If you can't truly like rest, and especially with a person that does something that I do, we're constantly traveling. We were talking about that before you hit record, but like I don't know any person that travels as many days in as I do. Mm-hmm. And
maybe LeBron James, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'll take him. And I mean, my rookie year, I was on the road 337 days. Oh, LeBron ain't traveling 330 days.
Yeah, no way.
And I'm gonna be honest, LeBron's probably traveled a little bit different than that Southwest that I was on too. So I just think that, so many people like shoot for the moon instead of like, all right, I'm going to change. And then it's like, I'm going to, drink 4 gallons of water. I'm going to sleep 12 hours. I'm going to train 4 hours. I'm never going to eat any sugar. And it's like, man, I hate life. This sucks. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, man, that's not sustainable. And I think that, you make one better decision, you build off it, and it becomes just like that Atomic Habits. It's an unbelievable book as far as when people are trying to make changes, as far as to give them an understanding and a path like of what that looks like. And, what truly one decision takes to become habitual,
Mm-hmm.
and same thing to just where it becomes sort of a non-negotiable. It's not a matter of if and when, just a matter of what time of day. And then you look at like programs like Hard 70 or 75 Hard, and like why they're so successful, because there's just non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to drink water. I'm going to be thankful. I'm going to work out outside. I'm going to train twice. I'm going to, like, these are all things. It's like, well, if I can build this for 75 days, like how many of these things are going to stick, and
Yeah.
how I can adapt this into basically like a total reset. And that's why things like that have become crazy successful, because just aspects of that just become, hey, I'm going to do this. Like, the number of times where people, like, how many people in your life are like, hey, Bryce, did you train today? It's like,
Did I
yeah.
brush my
like,
teeth today?
like, and training's different. Like, everything, like, I hiked Monday, like rucked and everything. And then like I trained with our team today, and like I might run tomorrow. Like, that's not like, hey man, I might not be in the gym every day, but I'm doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And
It
I
becomes a
think
part of
that
your
that's,
identity and your day to day, which is so important. Move fast and break shit. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer. The zipper pocket is an absolute game changer. I go from training at the gym directly to meetings, running errands, or prepping for podcasts. The LSKD tribe has become true family, and we are excited to continue to develop our community. Shop now at lskd.com and use code ALLSMITH. We chase the vibe here at AllSmith. Let's all become 1% better every day. And the other thing that I think is a huge takeaway of what you're saying is it becomes this conversation of finite versus infinite rules, right? And like finite rules are like Scott Stallings is training to try to peak for this major. But infinite rules are kind of like, hey, my job is to actually keep playing. My job is to keep doing this for as long as I can across a lifespan. And inevitably, when you play the game of infinite rules, it also satisfies the game of finite rules. And I think you do a great job of that. And I think it's important for people to hear that, because professional athletes are not above really good habits. Sometimes they have to do things that are also a little bit more intense than the day-to-day recreational weekend warrior. But I think what you're describing with regards to habit integration, doing small things that are sustainable over the course of time, I mean, there's 365 days in the year. If you can pick something and have, let's just say hypothetically, there's 255 mediocre workouts, and there's 25 horrible workouts, and then there's probably in there maybe 5 perfectly executed workouts. If you're only ever in pursuit of the perfection, when you feel your best, your most optimal, it's like on all the other days, are you just not going to train? You won't move the needle in the right direction if you only do it when everything is in alignment.
we literally had that conversation. Obviously the new big thing, like when you plunge, when you sauna, when you do like, especially, like all the biohacking and, what's optimal, what's not enough, what's too much, what's, counterproductive. And, just truly trying to make sure from anyone listening to whatever, like understand where your information is coming from and make sure it's consistent across the board. It's, understand who people are sponsored by, what influence is coming, and kind of understand, because there's a lot of unbelievable information out there, but there's also a lot of, man, it's a bunch of stuff to, screw you up and kind of throw you off, and understanding like truly what's validated, and kind of go from there. But
That's such a great point, man.
we were some of the guys that I train with, we don't really have a length enough of a season to do like a traditional like periodization schedule, or like where you try to isolate like hypertrophy and different things like that. So you basically like have a microcosm of what you do for a periodization schedule and week timelines. And, you know, I don't necessarily care to go into all the details of that, but basically we have short windows as far as where we got to get. If we can get some, you know, big strength work in, we got to be able to take advantage of it. So we've been visiting our European friends, the Bulgarians, quite a bit. And man, there's some unkind fellas. The fact that they don't rule the world is shocking to me.
Everybody loves Bulgarian split squats, man.
But just the fact that as a culture, if that's truly where that came from, if that's not a fabricated story, that they don't just rule the world as strong as their lower bodies are, if that's what they were doing, is just mind blowing to me. But we literally had that same conversation where you're talking about, it's like, you know, my legs feel like trash. I'm doing this is like, we've been for basically a month now, you know, single leg, double leg, you know, kind of, you know, pulling, you know, doing everything we possibly can to just try to have complex movements from, you know, from the floor, from elevated position, all the different things you can do, you know, from just lower body strength movements. And one of the guys is like, man, is this ever going to feel better? And like, I feel like just so defeated. And I was like, man, just at some point, like if we can just continue to build and build and build, like we're going to have that one where we get over the hurdle. Mm-hmm. And I was just trying to understanding of like the workload towards that, instead of like, dude, it takes me like till Thursday to where I feel like my legs are back under me after we have like a training session like that. And he was a little bit on the side of like, well, what's the point if I'm not there? And it's like, man, the point of just the lasting effect of all this is just way more than what your mind is seeing. You're just seeing the fact that your legs feel like crap instead of understanding just the magnitude that's happening on the back end of all that from a physiological standpoint. He's like, I was playing and he had one of these other, you know, training sessions that we talked about. And he's like, all right, I just had the one. And it's like everyone has that one, and it's like the one shot in golf that like keeps you playing instead of like giving your clubs away to someone in the parking lot. It's like you hit that one shot, and it's like, if that's the only thing that people were chasing, like nobody would play. Yeah. Because like I'm one of the best players in the world, and I hit crappy shots all the time. And you know, if it was only the perfect pure shot, it's like I for sure wouldn't play. Let alone, you know, some weekend warrior that plays, you know, 9 holes on Saturdays and just different things like that. So that was a good point as far as the infinite and, you know, kind of overall arching, instead of, you know, trying to just focus on that perfect scenario. Because I mean, life doesn't work like that, man.
No way.
It's just not
you described it perfectly.
Recipe I like for failure too.
Yeah, man, I like the way you said that a lot. And it's also just realizing that in the day-to-day, you're kind of trying to be a master of the mundane. There's not really big changes that you see on the day-to-day. I know Simon Sinek talked about it. He goes, you go to the gym on a Monday, and you train, and then you go home, you look in the mirror, and what do you see? Nothing. You go on Tuesday, you go to the gym, you work hard, you come back, what do you see? Nothing. But if you do that, you do get these little percentage-based compounding effects over the course of time, where there are miracles in moments, and they may not happen every day. They may be few and far between, but if you're only in pursuit of the miracle or just the outcome, and you're not falling in love with the journey, inevitably you're going to be relatively disappointed most of the time. And I think Correct. That's a huge conversation to have with people as we're navigating this life experience on this random floating rock. Is like, maybe we're not meant to feel good all the time. Maybe it's meant to be hard some days, mediocre other days, a little bit better other days. You get little micro wins. You celebrate some cool things with some friends. You have some sadness. You have sometimes you're just like blah. But the goal is to just keep going, keep showing up. And you do a great job of that. And I think golf is a great analogy for that as well, because it's never really perfect, but how do you adapt to that next shot? And something I really love pulling from the world of basketball, and you see this a lot with Steph Curry and his golf game, and it's like the art of having short-term memory. Can you hit a shot, move on to the next one, and not be married to what happened in the past that has no indication on what's going to happen in the future? And you see that with him all the time. He can miss 10 shots, but he always believes the 11th is going to go in. Is that something that lands on your radar a little bit, is that element of short-term memory?
Yeah, like I work with our guys and even myself, like, I don't care what your good is, because if you're at this level, your good's really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's how bad is your bad, and understanding of, like, you hear all the Tiger stories, like, I won X number of tournaments with like my C game, is like, man, that's pretty awesome. But you hear like different things like that, and how can you let that one shot, and does it affect the next? Does it affect the next hole? Does it affect the next three holes? Like, how far does it carry on? And you see it a lot in like junior and development stuff, when basically like the emotional part is developing as much as like the physical part. And it's just like, you see the train just off the tracks.
Once the emotions start going up and down, man, the decision making just
Yeah.
plummets.
Yeah. So we'll do some different things, and literally just try to just create chaos in practice, and try to make practice as difficult as possible. And, just where it gets real, and, life comes at you quick. And that's why training is beautiful too. 'Cause like, you have a little bit of the performance aspect, but you just gotta, hey, I'm just going to go deal with like really sucky things for like an hour and just learn how to overcome it. And then I'm just going to go about my day. And like,
That right there, though,
could,
is the secret sauce, in my opinion, of what you described with the sauna and the cold plunge. I don't care what your temperature is. I don't care how long you do it. I don't need to have the nuance of the ego associated with it. It's like, did you do something that was hard for you? And did it shift your state so that the rest of your life is better? I think if you do that, you have this understanding that those things are just tools. They don't need to have golden handcuffs on you.
yeah, I think that people like validate themselves, like, oh, my cold plunge is X and my sauna is Y. It's like, man, mine's pretty hot and it's pretty cold, and that's kind of what I do. And I've been in hotter, and I've been in colder, and I've been in whatever, but like, that's kind of where I resonate. And the same thing is like, there's so much of life that can be explained to you. Anyone that's ever sat on a echo bike, and basically, which is the most undefeated piece of fitness equipment on planet Earth.
So true.
And Josh Bridges is a good buddy of mine, and he sent me this power hour workout, and it was 30 on, 30 off for an hour, no music.
Perfect. Classic
And
Josh,
just
pay the man.
all mental. And I mean, it took me, in your goals, to get 700 calories or more. So like, you can't really sandbag any of them. Like, you're at least like churning off. It took me 3 times to do it I got 714 and 721.
Nice.
But like, no music, you're in your own head, and you're literally on just, Satan's tricycle for an hour, and you get off and you're like, I can do anything. If I can do that, I can literally do anything, let alone irrelevant of the calorie output, just sitting on there for an hour with no music, no podcast, by yourself, and just listening to the beep of the clock. And you're just like, I mean, I literally wanted to go throw it off my roof after it was over. I just never wanted to hear it again. But it's just like embracing difficulty and understanding that, like, I'm going to just deal with this and overcome it. And that's kind of like a lot of life too. Like, I may not like the circumstances that I'm in, but like, I'm going to just figure out the way to deal with the best I possibly can, and kind of go from there. My son was at a lacrosse player, and I had an opportunity to go to my first tournament with him a couple weeks ago. And it was a unique experience, because obviously I'm the one that's normally competing. So it was weird, like, helping him get ready and different things like that. And the weather sucked. It was horrible the first day. And it's like 6:30 in the morning. We're kind of getting up. He's about to play a bunch of games. And he looks outside and he's like, whoa, like, not good. We're at the hotel. And he's like, Dad, like, what would you be doing? I was like, dude, I'd be figuring out opportunity to know that I'm just going to whip everybody, because my attitude is going to be good. And he literally looks at me. It's not even 7 a.m. He's like, it's too early for the attitude talk. I mean, he's 10.
Yeah.
But it's, in my mind, like, as a competitor, I'm looking for adversity as an opportunity to overcome and just beat people before we even tee off. And it's just kind of funny because I look back on experience and stuff. It's like, everyone thinks back to, oh, what's the worst workout you've ever done? And people can just talk about all types of horrible things they've done to themselves. But you look at it as like, oh, I can do that. Like, I can go stand in the rain for 4 hours and play golf. Like, that's not a big deal. And just start you have a baseline to kind of build you up is like, well, I've done all this other stuff. So this is just sort of one of those things kind of go on top of the pile that's just, I can pull back on there and realize like, man, that really wasn't that bad. And you start to look at it like every Buds person, any SEALs, like, yes, Buds was hard, but like that wasn't like a thing. It was like, I knew what I was going to get myself into and going from there and just totally downplaying like the hardest training of all time. But
it's
that's
such a great mindset
think.
to have though, man. It's a great way to think. And also I think a lot of unlocking human potential is not just on the other side of adversity, but it's also being alone with yourself. And what you talked about, being on the bike for an hour, no music, eventually you get to the point where it's you versus your thoughts. And so a lot of those thoughts are, man, I'm so uncomfortable sitting on this thing. Like, can we move the seat this way? Like, I've got so much sweat in my eyes. The fan keeps blowing in my face. Like the little micro stresses that weren't a big deal for the first 20 minutes start to become a bigger deal on the back end of that. And then it forces us as human beings to better understand ourselves. Why is that little thing bothering me? Why am I granting permission to that external factor to live rent-free between my ears when I'm in control as to what I allow into my mind, my body, and my brain? And I think it's a great way for you to really have emotional control, attitude control, and the fact that you're now using that to inspire your son and the next generation, I think that's so cool, man.
We've got a little buddy of mine here is graphic design and built this TriStar kettlebell logo, and it says attitude and effort over the top of it. And basically just, you break it down to those are the two things you have control over every single day. And if that's truly the way that you approach it, like it's really going to kind of be hard to get off. And if I kind of wake up and then kind of in any situation reverse to like, all right, what's my attitude towards this? What's my effort I'm about to put forward? And it's like, it's amazing how much it's a little bit of a reset. And my caddy has definitely used that at a tournament. If my attitude starts to shift one way or the other, and he's like, all right, I need that attitude to whatever. It's like, all right, I feel like this effort, and whatever. So my own thing that I kind of use is definitely like get used against me sometimes if my dauber gets down a little bit. So, but yeah, it's a good way to kind of help for a reset and kind of understanding that, embracing difficulty and understanding to create resiliency and through the midst of adversity is an opportunity to come out better on the other side. And, with complacency and, just a lot of things that come in this current generation, people are just, they seek comfort and, want to do things that are easy. And, it's amazing, what kind of life that leads to, especially a lot of opportunity for disappointment.
What is something you did as a child that you no longer do as an adult? For many, that answer is play. RX Smart Gear allows for your daily workouts to turn into play and exploration. In my training, the Frevo rope gives me access to a versatile rope that I can take with me wherever I go. On the road, at the beach, to the park, or playing at home, RX Smart Gear jump ropes fit my needs. We at Allsmith trust RX Smart Gear. Their gear is always reliable and gives me peace of mind that I will have top-notch equipment to support my health and fitness journey. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use the discount code ALLSMITH to shop their latest cutting-edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you. I want to jump into your history a little bit. What was it about 1997 when Tiger won the Masters, when he kind of started really making golf cool? How did that impact you and your decision to kind of go all in on the sport of golf?
Well, I made my first hole-in-one the week before he won. And then you see this, young kid come out there and just whip him. And it was freaking awesome. And you look and you're just like, I think I would maybe like to do that. And I was not a great player. at the time. I was way better at other sports. And I remember calling the baseball coach, and it's like, I don't think I'm going to play. And it was kind of, now it's weird to think of like 13, 14 years old, something like that, as far as like just kind of getting into like, are we going to travel? Are you going to kind of like what that looks like? I mean, my son's 10 and he's traveled for lacrosse for 2 years. And now just thinking of like how crazy that is. If you'd have told me like, man, we were going to go anywhere other than to the local baseball field when I was a kid, it was like, we're not leaving here. And that's where you played.
They start them young now, man. Like the recruiting
Yeah.
process, we look at the NIL, we look at how sport has evolved through this social media world. The kids are really starting young. The pressure and the expectations are on the shoulders at a very early age.
Yeah, the specialization, the burnout. I mean, obviously that may be like a whole different podcast in it, especially like, you know, in order to find, if you're looking around and trying to figure out who the old guy in the room is, it's you. And I definitely look around like, I mean, it's definitely me now. And you kind of look at it and you definitely get a fresh perspective and kind of understand the culture and the way that a lot of the kids, you know, grow up now. That, I mean, it's just totally different. And looking at it and, you know, kind of seeing where it is. But, you know, that was a unique experience looking back. But it's rare to see someone that inspired you to pursue a career at something at the highest level and have a chance to play and compete against them. Which is kind of the beauty of golf, where like a kid watching LeBron play will never play against LeBron in the NBA. Where, you know, Tiger, I mean, he was 2021 when he came out, and I had a chance to play with him my rookie year at 24. And he was, 2 years later, he was player of the year in 2013. It was just kind of wild to have a chance to know that, like, I literally got to play and compete against him while, you know, he was obviously still incredibly competitive.
You were also at your peak too at that time. You said he was player of the year in 2013. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of your PGA Tour victories were in 2011, 2012, and then the Farmers Insurance Open in 2014. So he clearly knew who you were too.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, obviously he's had a lot of time on and off there with the injuries and different things like that. So, I mean, he kind of knew me like in the bigger phase. Well, I guess that's what we're calling dark ages. I don't know. I mean, that's who I was. I don't shy away from it. You know, definitely not something I'm super proud of the way I handle myself, but I mean, I'm definitely like, oh, that never happened, or I don't want to talk about it or whatever. I mean, that's my makeup, and, you know, that's how I got to this point of where I am today. But it was funny. I played with him at Torrey, you know, kind of in the evolution of, you know, my body and changing and kind of everything. And he walked off to the first tee and he's like, "What happened to you?" And I was like, "Man, we're about to have 2 days, figure it out." And I mean, we talked more about training and lifting and different things like that. And it was a really, really cool experience to literally have someone that obviously made me want to go and pursue a career in professional golf, and then basically take a huge interest in like how I use training and, you know, all the other things that I do to be able to get myself to the situation of where I am today. And so that was, you know, really cool to see. And, you know, someone like him to kind of take an interest in, you know, hearing how with all his injuries, how he's had to adapt training and, you know, figure out different things. And he's like, "Dude, I would just love to just rip a couple deadlifts." And it was just funny. Like, he's like, "I do like 95-pound, like, you know, hex bar." That's like his max, because he, like, with all his spine and everything like that.
Yep.
It's just like, man, that was different.
Yeah,
but it
man.
was, you know, he was talking about like in his heyday of the way that he trained and some different things like that, which is super cool to be able to kind of ask like how that all came and the evolution of what that looked like as far as his career progressed as well.
I'm sure there's plenty of people that are listening to this that are hooked now, where it's like, all right, what is the training philosophy and methodology of Scott Stallings? You definitely do some really cool kettlebell complexes, where I've seen you do single arm swing, single arm clean high pull into a kettlebell snatch, into a kettlebell split snatch. You do some really awesome rotational drills with the landmine that I've seen. We talked a little bit off air how you had Cooper and Josh Bridges and some of that crew using the Bosu ball against the wall and working on thoracic rotation, using a PVC pipe to kind of integrate some thoracic rotation. And I love the way you describe it, man, which is space and understanding. You'll go to any gym in the world, CrossFit gym, whatever, and you'll jump into the space, but you're not going to be out there trying to squat snatch, 200 plus pounds all the time. That's not going to be directly correlative to what you're trying to do in your sport and in your world. And also, you're 38 years old now. You want some longevity and you want things that are going to positively impact your life, your career, and also, who you are as a man and a father and a husband. If you could kind of summarize some of the key principles associated with your training now that, the recreational golfer could take with them today, what would you say?
I would try to summarize it in, we get a lot of the questions with the HWPO program we have out. You're going to pull, push, twist, and turn at a relatively higher heart rate a lot. And you look at it from the perspective of and that's not trying to be humorous or whatever. That's just the fact.
Yeah, simple.
Golf is a high-speed rotational sport that you do a lot. And I think that there's opportunities to, build and coordinate strength throughout those movements, but there's also a way to, train that movement pattern that kind of mimics the way that, you play, and you make a lot of swings, you practice a lot, and you got to have some muscle endurance to be able to handle those kind of things as far as, over the course of long days, long weeks, long months, long seasons, and longer careers. I couldn't imagine the amount of golf swings that I have made in the course of my career, let alone my life. So why wouldn't I try to train in the fact of I'm trying to be stronger, I'm trying to move better, all these different things, but I want to make sure that I can handle what that looks like over the course of, weeks, months, and years. And, so that kind of mimics that. And that's kind of the easiest way to understanding of how my own training works and, how we put it together in sort of a scaled down version for just sort of the general public.
Yeah, it's a great summary, man. And I also really appreciate the integration of shoulder and scapular stability things that I've seen you do on YouTube, with kettlebell windmills being a really important one. Really taking the time to activate and get your core body temperature up and get some not only rotational mobility in, but some inchworms, hopping on a machine a little bit and getting some blood flow and movement. And one of the major takeaways that I stole from your episode with both Heber and Mars, the Buttery Bros episode about 3 years ago, those guys are awesome, by the way, was I loved that you had that one part of training where you put the damper up to damper 10, and it was 10 explosive pulls as hard as possible. And that's kind of a mindset that's not really thrown into CrossFit all the time. It's always how many calories, how many meters, or you're doing it as a numerical value for time, as opposed to an attitude and effort-based performance, which I very much appreciated you sharing. Because traditional golf strength and conditioning back in the day is TRX, ITs, and Ys, maybe some sort of med ball throw or Russian twist, maybe a little bit of running or box step-ups because of the longevity of being on the course. But there was no specificity of core stability with rotational and centripetal force with the kettlebell like you've done before. There wasn't really single leg stuff. There wasn't true strength and conditioning. It was kind of trying to check a box and not really get a ton of value in the weight room. And I think you're changing the game and changing the conversation with the added value of Matt Frazier and the HWPO crew.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to kind of take people like Matt, Rich, Josh, a bunch of the Noble ladies, all the people that we have a chance to meet within, the Noble community, and now the HWPO, and kind of what that looks like in the world of the PGA Tour, and try to put together, something that, kind of meets the needs of a lot of different people across all different, skill levels and fitness levels in golf. And you put it together, especially from the scalability and understanding reps and weight and all the different things as far as movements that, can kind of go in the hardest thing that we programmed was figuring out how to band 120 movements. And so we have a iteration of that coming up. But I mean, just people need different things. But then you go to a traditional, like, strength and conditioning program, as far as, how you want to check all the boxes. You want to push, pull, hinge, all the different things that you want to do, and to kind of check what you're talking about, checking the box. And there's so many different things you can do with a rotational component that does all those things. And, we just sort of condensed it and put it in a spot where it's a little bit easier to understand. And, they kind of all follow on top of each other, where basically there's just checklists for a whole week, and you're going to do all of those single arm, double arm, and kind of move through that, where through the course of the week you're going to touch everything. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And nothing's crazy or whatever, but it's something you're going to move, you're going to feel better, and hopefully lead to lower scores on a course and longer opportunity to play
and enhance biomarkers for sure. What's it been like connecting Noble and HWPO and kind of what started off as traditional CrossFit brands and then have since started to diversify into other sports and other arenas? What's it been like kind of being the poster boy and the focal point in leading those brands into the sport of golf and the innovation of products and services that can then help people all over the world?
I think that idea of like authentic user, obviously I'm in a business relationship with a lot of different brands and companies that I used well before that established. And, I trained in Noble before I ever knew anyone at Noble. And, I just like the culture. I like the idea that, as far as how the brand was created. And, I just thought it was a really unique, just kind of way to go about doing things. But bringing it into a, very traditional standard setting with the world of professional golf, especially once you throw sort of the gritty, chalk CrossFit community like that we're all kind of familiar with now, and you put it into like some pleated pants, cotton shirt culture. It's like, man, those two worlds just struggled to kind of operate well together. And so it's created a lot of like, but it's a lot of cool opportunities when people see that, there's a harmony, that everything kind of works together. And then, definitely put in some situations with the relationships now to have a chance to do a lot of different things that probably weren't possible in the past. And, the tour's definitely done a good job as trying to embrace, sort of the change in, health, wellness, recovery, fitness training, all the different things that kind of go and across that world. And I feel very fortunate and honored to be one of the guys that kind of help, lead that and kind of bring that to the, to the PGA Tour, and to be able to use that as a showcase to put that in front of the golf world in general.
Totally, man. Trailblazing a new path in the golf space and working with visionaries like Todd Melanie and your official caddy, Matt O'Keefe, a.k.a. the Chief.
Yeah,
some really good guys that you're connecting with there. As we wrap things up so you can take your son to lacrosse practice, man, I have one really important question, and I think a lot of people are going to be wondering this. Do you look at golf 100% as a professional, or do you have moments where you just go out with the boys and you play around a little bit, maybe you have a couple beers with the guys, you're driving around in the golf cart, and you just kind of turn off PGA Tour, Scott, and you turn into just hanging with the buddies, Scott, or is that hard to do on the golf course?
I think there's a time and a place for everything. Just in understanding that, golf is something I've loved to do my whole life. And I want to be cognizant of that. And always, that was like, COVID was the greatest thing ever for golf, because that was the first time any of us got any, like, where no one else was playing. So everyone kind of had forced time out. And, I went and got a carry bag, like high school, middle school, whatever, carried, kind of got back into it. And it was the first time I was like, man, I freaking love this. And, so it was a cool opportunity to kind of go into that and find. So, yeah, there's like work mode and this and that. Like this time of year, like I'm playing, if I play, like I'm not, there's no like long range sessions. I might hit balls for a little bit at my house or whatever. And, just kind of make sure like I got a feel for what I'm doing. But man, like you get a good afternoon where the weather's nice and whatever, like I'll still enjoy playing. And sometimes that's with some of my friends. They're just, relatively normal amateur guys. And then there's, good players or a little money game or something like that. And, I'm not really shy away from anything, but I do enjoy playing much more than practicing. And, little trash talk here and there, keep sharp and, kind of be always, just try to stay on top of that. And,
you cross paths with MJ yet? You and Michael Jordan crossing paths and kind of sharing a little smack talking back and forth?
I have. I've had an opportunity to play with him a couple times, and he's really good at it. But I feel like after this long in my career, I feel like I can definitely hold my own.
Well, I appreciate you jumping on and kind of spitballing back and forth with me. As we conclude today's conversation, man, what's your favorite thing about being a father? I'm always curious about that.
I feel like as golf and marriage and all the different things can teach you, being a parent and truly understanding what unconditional love is. Like I love my wife, and I know that she loves me, and the ability to kind of showcase that with, all the different ways that a relationship kind of adapts. But having someone, in the birthing process and understanding that at a moment's notice of literally going from not having a child or whatever to knowing that at a second's notice of that child coming into the world, that I would give my life up for basically someone that has no way to reciprocate that to me. And like that was a huge eye-opening experience. And I'd never, until you have a chance to experience that, that's kind of hard to understand. But like going into it and truly understanding what unconditional love is something that is, I will never forget that for the rest of my life. And now my kids are older and we have the back talk and all the different things of what childhood brings. And I'm like, man, I still love this child unconditionally. I kind of don't like her right now, but I just think, always be on your toes, and just, especially with a boy and a girl at two completely different ages, that you have to be ready at all times because anything is possible. And they do a good job of keeping my wife on my toes. And my wife is definitely the general, and she runs a tight ship, and she'll do this a lot and wave her fingers up. And that means, especially if I do something super dumb, and she says she has 3 children, myself included. And so she's definitely got her hands full with us.
I love that, man. Well, thanks so much for giving us a brief peek behind the curtain on your life and your world, and sharing some cool stories with me today. For those of you listening or observing on YouTube, if you enjoyed my conversation with professional golfer Scott Stallings, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, guys, greatness is forged